Welcome to video 2 of our Sabbath series. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the table. And before we get started, I would love to read Mark 2. And before I do that even, I just want to talk about where we're picking up in the text. Because before we get to this story of Jesus, we're going to sort of get a little picture into how Jesus did the Sabbath. And we see Jesus before this healing a paralyzed man, and he's calling his disciples, and people ask him why his disciples are not fasting. And he says, why do they fast when I'm around? It's time to celebrate. Someday they will fast when I'm gone, but not now. And so we pick up the text in Mark 2, and it says, one Sabbath day, as Jesus was walking through some grain fields, his disciples began breaking off heads of grain to eat. But the Pharisees said to Jesus, "Look, why are they breaking the law by harvesting grain on the Sabbath?" And Jesus said to them, "Haven't you read in the scriptures what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He went into the house of God during the days when Abiathar was high priest, and he broke the law by eating the sacred loaves of bread that only the priests are allowed to eat, and he gave some to his companions. Then Jesus said to them, 'The Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people, and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even over the Sabbath.'" And even in Jesus' day, people were so concerned about what Jesus was and was not doing. And the Sabbath in this passage, he is feeding his disciples, and he's eating with them on the Sabbath, just after he heals a man with a deformed hand on the Sabbath. And we see Jesus, he is feeding, he is restoring, he is reconciling, he heals and he frees people. And he says there are no requirements. It's way more about Sabbath keeping us than us keeping Sabbath. And as I practiced this over the last, for sure over the last 5 years, and even I started dabbling in it a little bit more, turns out I'm not great at it. But I remember this passage from Scripture as Sabbath was made for us. We are not made for the Sabbath. It is a gift for us. And this can be a tricky practice to include in your life because it can feel like it has such rigidity, like what we can and cannot do. But we're wondering, can we just start by sharing a meal? Does Sabbath just start at the table? And in Jewish culture, they start the Sabbath with this Shabbat meal that on Friday night that sort of like helps them to enter in. It sets this time apart. And this meal was this like threshold moment where they were entering into a different kind of time, a restful time, a time where they could look back on the week, a time where they could delight and enjoy and be in community with one another. And so just this super practical thing, we don't need to make Sabbath like that hard and so hard that we can't even practice it. So I just wonder if our tables can become a place where Sabbath is practiced, where we can look across from one another, we can enjoy one another, we can spend time with one another, we can read scripture, we can pray for one another, we can even just say hi and eat together. And this is really the beauty of this that I have really enjoyed, that Sabbath has sort of like grown for me, is that this is done with people. There's a beauty in silence and solitude, and Sabbath is also just this invitation to enjoy and delight with others. And so you may have seen our Sabbath Moment booklet, but it's just this easy guide of how do you even intentionally make space for Sabbath to be practiced around our table. And so if you don't have one, you can pick one up at our kiosk or find it online. But what if we practiced that time of rest, that beautiful time set aside around our tables? And could it be that simple? Because we got to eat anyways.